Ken's den.
It'd be helpful if I turned on my microphone.
And it'd be helpful if you turn it off when you get on the telephone between the 6 and 8 o'clock hour. I forgot to tell you that.
What do you mean?
Your mic was open on one of your phone calls, but only your side.
Huh?
Yeah.
We didn't have any phone calls.
Well, you were talking with somebody.
Oh.
Yeah.
Probably Jay.
Never mind. Go ahead.
The views expressed by the host during his monologue are those solely of his own, not those of me or anybody else. Who cares? And now.
That's an intro.
This is where it's going already. You already know what type of day it's going to be.
Okay.
I quit.
No.
You know what, Pete?
Jay, take over.
No, wait. Oh, here it goes.
What's going on, Ken?
After one of our trips, people usually are entertained by the tales of our travels.
Yes.
I'm sure everybody heard that door slam.
I did. Do you want me to go check and see who's there?
See if anyone's on the ground.
Yeah.
No. But, usually people are entertained by tales of our travels. In the past, it has usually been around the complications of a non-functioning window and Pete's Santa Fe when a ripe one is ripped.
Oh, my God, help us.
Here we go.
Or perhaps it is about how somebody performs a righteous Technicolor yawn and then uses Mountain Dew as a rinse. And he's not even monitoring to appreciate this.
No.
The vehicular travels are mostly non-eventful this time around.
Ooh, really?
For the past 4+ years, I've always insisted that we get our own separate hotel rooms.
Mm-hmm. Good choice.
Last week, we were forced into sharing a room.
Oh, my God, help you.
To be fair, the room was broken into 2 distinct areas.
Okay.
But our beds were within view of each other.
Okay.
I experienced what I feared all along. What would happen if we shared rooms. Everybody knows Pete and myself both snore and fart at night.
No, everybody didn't, but they do now.
Add in a television that could only be heard when the air conditioning was off.
Yeah.
And you get a cycle that looks something like this.
Uh-oh.
Ken snores, wakes up Pete. Pete snores, wakes up Ken. AC turns off, TV too loud, Pete wakes up, Ken goes to sleep. AC turns on, drowns out TV, Pete goes to sleep, Ken wakes up. AC turns off, Ken snores, wakes up Pete.
True.
Ken farts, wakes himself up. AC turns on, Pete goes to sleep, Ken wakes up.
Oh, jeez.
Pete snores, wakes self up.
That's true, too.
Ken hacks, wakes both up. AC turns off, Pete stays up, Ken goes to sleep.
Oh, jeez.
And the cycle goes on and on and on and on. I am never going to do that again. Did I lose Bob?
Yep.
Okay. That explains...
Just dropped out.
That explains the funky view there.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Hold on, I'm working on getting you...
I'm never, ever going to do that again. I just may prefer sleeping on the ground behind a dumpster at Cumberland Farms than to have to deal with that again. And I just want to make note of something. Mr. Coles caused some of these issues himself.
Uh-oh. Peter.
Why?
For lunch, he decided on Mexican food. This guy right here.
Not on Friday. Oh, Saturday. Yeah, that's
Yep.
Saturday. Yeah. But that was like right across the parking lot. And it's not like we could really move on Saturday anywhere.
See, excuses, right?
Convenience.
So, yes, he decided on Mexican food.
And it was good.
We all know what happens when you have the double, triple chimichanga with extra broccoli, especially when you are stuck westbound on the Massachusetts green stamp. That's a reference to a monologue from several years back.
Yes.
I will have to say that the food was good. And I can tell you, because the bottom burp I expelled around 2 a.m. actually woke myself up. That's when that happened. I'm just trying to imagine what the guests in the abutting rooms were experiencing.
We had that corner, though, so I don't think anybody really heard us.
We left plenty early in the morning so as to not have to look at any of them in the face.
That's also true.
2 hours into our trek north, we had one more act to perform before we left the Sunshine State. Breakfast.
Yes.
We needed to stop for some, since we didn't have any at the bed and breakfast we were at.
We left a little early.
With the exception of the workers wearing masks, it was pretty freaking normal.
Yep.
And I'm just realizing right now that I am torn. Breakfast in the Virginia area or breakfast down south?
Ooh.
Down south, you get proper grits. Love that. In the Virginia area, you get scrapple. Love that too.
Yep.
For those of you who have no idea what scrapple is, I encourage you to Google it. Go ahead. I will wait. In case you didn't Google it.
That's funny.
Or if you already did. Yes. Pig offals. Livers, fat, snout, hearts. All cooked down for hours into a mush that solidifies when chilled. And then you deep fry it.
It's actually pretty good.
Hello, Lipitor. And by the way, that was offals, not offals.
I got it. OFF.
OFFAL.
Got it.
Offcuts. Now I kind of want both.
Ooh. Decisions.
I think I know what I'm going to do when I get done here.
Okay.
Grits and scrapple for lunch. Why not? I'm not clock or calendar watching right now. Unless Pete tells me where I have to be when, I will eat breakfast at noon. I just got a great idea.
Oh, no.
I will need to run this by Chef next week. Use a slice of deep-fried scrapple in place of the Canadian bacon and eggs Benedict. Smacznego.
Which means...
That's Polish for bon appetit.
Okay. Okay.
Smacznego. I'm going to be out of work all year long. Get used to this stuff, kids, okay? It doesn't get any better. Let's pay our bills. We'll be back right after this.
Seems like yesterday, but it was long ago. Jane, it was lovely, she was the queen of my night. There in the darkness with the radio playing rolling, and the secrets that we shared, the mountains that we moved, caught like a wildfire out of control, till there was nothing left to burn and nothing left to prove. And I remember what she said to me, how she swore that it never would end. I remember how she held me, oh so tight. Wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. myself alone, surrounded by strangers I thought were my friends. Found myself further and further from my home, and I guess I lost my way. There were oh so many roads. I was living to run and running to live, never worried about paying or even how much I owe. Moving 8 miles a minute for months at a time, breaking all of the rules that would bend. I began to find myself searching for shelter again and again. Against the wind, little something against the wind. I found myself seeking shelter against the wind.
WSKD provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio 89.5 WSKD.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
July is National Baked Bean Month.
Oh, not a good thing to have.
Yes, a month in which we pay tribute to one of America's favorite, most healthful, and nutritious foods. I'm terribly sorry. As I was saying, good Lord, this is terribly embarrassing. I'm so... Whoa, doggy! I guess I'd better wrap this up quick. Basically, Jesus, whoa! Oh, God! My God!
Baked beans. They're nature's way of saying, for God's sake, open a window. Sorry.
8:28 and a half.
Okay.
Just a reminder that coming up July will be National Baked Beans Month.
Good to know.
And
Good to know something.
while if I'm on that topic, Pete, make sure none of the custodial staff decides to go into the executive washroom anytime soon.
Oh, no. Means I got to walk all the way down the hallway?
Yeah, you're going to have to.
Speaking of food,
too bad Bob isn't on the line because he'd really enjoy that conversation.
he lost his internet. That's he texted me. North Elm Butcher Block is doing a lunch special today.
I saw that.
Tacos.
I'm so excited.
Brisket and pork belly tacos, 2 for $7.
You know, each Friday they're doing Food Truck Friday too.
I know.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
I might be getting tacos for lunch.
Danny, if you're listening, I'm waiting for the Jim Dandy chicken to come back.
I know, that was good too.
I will get a bucket of that stuff.
You like that?
It's pretty damn good chicken. They brine it, I think, overnight.
Yeah,
and you can tell.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they make good stuff there.
Yeah.
Just saying.
They do, and they seem to do very well because whenever I go by, there's always a line.
There's a line there waiting.
Always, yep, to get in. And people I know that have done it say that they're absolutely wonderful. They're quick. They're efficient. You're in, you're out. It's awesome. It's nice to know that businesses can still be doing business and do well at it and get good publicity from it. They've been around a long time, that market.
Mm-hmm.
Poozes have been involved forever. As long as I can remember. We used to call it Poozes Market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tied in kind of with Poozes Pure Food.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they're brothers, aren't they?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So, I was kind of hoping Bob would be on the line for therapy, but now you, Kathy.
I am here, but boy, I don't know if I could ever give you any therapy. Holy smokes.
I've noticed that the speed on my internet has been tanking between 11:30 a.m. and 4 p.m.
Really?
Because everybody's on school.
I had this issue up at my office in Northampton with Comcast, and it took them a month and a half to actually say, okay, yeah, there is a problem. And then they started to tell me exactly what it was.
Okay.
And I think the same thing is happening here. I'm getting a runaround. Nobody's listening to me at Comcast. I can't say that.
You didn't. I didn't hear it.
I called up, explained the problem. Oh, okay, Mr. Ken, we will reset your modem. Yeah, I've already done that,
Yeah, me too.
All right, I built my own network. I wired my own house. I troubleshot. Trust me. So they let it go at that. Okay, well, everything seems okay on our end. Yeah, because it's not acting up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Contact them the next day. Problem's still here. And okay, all right, we will send you a technician between 2 and 4. What's your phone number so that the tech can call you? Well, 4:30 comes around. I'm on the phone. Your guy never showed up during the guaranteed 2-hour window. Oh, we don't see an appointment scheduled for you. I go, well, go through the transcript of the last log, and you'll see 2 to 4. Yes, sir, I see that. I go, why weren't they here between 2 and 4?
Yeah, and there was no appointment scheduled.
Because there was no appointment scheduled. I go, well, it's right there. And at this point, I cut out my day to wait for nothing because now I have to wait again for them to come back. They're supposed to be around between 10 and 2 or 10 and 12 today. If I'm there, I'm there. If I'm not, not my problem. I waited for you on Monday.
And they wonder why they people leave them.
So now, they're trying to text me a link to a website for me to click OK, and it's changing everything to paperless billing and automatic payment. I'm like, no, I'm not agreeing to that. well, you have to click yes in order to do the professional installation. I go, it's already installed. He's coming here to check the line going out to the street. Yes, well, you need to click OK. I go, if I click OK, I'm going to get switched over to paperless billing. I don't want that. So finally, I said, okay, well, have somebody call you. And he goes, I promise someone will call you. What do you? I told him that when you promise to call back, you never call back. Yeah, they haven't called back. Ugh. So now I'm steaming because fiber skips my street and goes down the other streets.
I've had some trouble.
You need to complain with Whip City Fiber.
I already have.
No, call them daily.
There's not enough interest on your street, yet I know of at least 3 houses on a street with a dozen houses that are interested.
I know. I think if you call them every day and have all your neighbors call them every day, they'll get it done. Squeaky wheel.
I don't know. They came out my way, and there's no houses out there, so I don't know that that's an excuse. I really don't.
Oh, really?
They came out my way a long time ago when they first started, and I'm 2.5 miles out, and I'm probably the 7th house on the left, maybe. That's how many few houses there are.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but I think you were a pathway to another town. Because I know that
I'm a dead end. How can I be another town? I'm a dead end.
I thought but it ran by your street to go to Montgomery, didn't it?
Well, you would you would have to go all the way up West Road. There's houses on West Road, but no, Montgomery goes up Montgomery Road. I'm on Pachasik, so that's.
I don't know then. Okay.
Unless they wanted it to go up West Road, because there are a lot of houses up there, so that may be very.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm going to see fiber anytime soon because they're just not going to go down that road. I even talked to them personally, saying, "Hey, look, I need to upload things to Channel 15 because I produce a lot of the programming. I need the speed."
Right.
Sorry, we're just not going to be down there. So now I'm thinking, Elon.
Why don't you bring it up? Why don't you bring it up when the mayor comes on? You do know people.
I hate to throw my weight around. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that person.
Well, you know what? If it gets the job done, it gets the job done.
I might have to. But now I'm thinking, if Elon Musk can boogie along with Starlink, I'll just put a reflector up outside my window and do satellite. That's supposed to be very promising, that system.
Yeah.
Low Earth satellite internet.
As you know, I'm speechless.
They've been launching all these little satellites.
I see them. I go out and watch them.
Hey, Pete, how many do they deploy at a time on that Starlink?
I think it's 30.
Yeah.
I know it's at least 20. And when you see them go over, it's like watching a pearl necklace go across the sky.
Yeah, they've worked on. They're working on that. This batch has a shield it's a deployable shield that the most reflective parts. It's supposed to dampen that because a lot of astronomers have complained. So they're working with them.
Why are they complaining?
Because apparently it's affecting their observations of the night sky.
But it's only at certain times.
They were complaining.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's going to complain about something.
But they're working on mitigation, so But apparently they're gonna have, when it's all deployed, it's either 18,000 satellites to cover the globe.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And people have been talking about this concept for years, and we've had other smaller constellations of satellites for satellite telephones and things like that, but never on this scale.
Correct. The viewing is I've only seen it twice, so I don't know how often you can see them. I really don't know how often they fly over here. There's something coming up on the 11th that we're supposed to be able to see. I'll have to check and see what that is.
Pete, those are geosync, aren't they?
No.
No?
No.
Oh.
They're way too low. They're only about 300 miles up.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah, so they can't even be geosync then.
Okay, and that would mean
they rotate the same speed as the Earth.
Geosynchronous orbitation.
Okay, you two, there you go.
Yeah, it's like the.
It appears as a fixed point in the sky.
Yeah, like the HughesNet satellite for internet. That's at the 101 degree location, and it's always there.
All right.
It appears to us as a fixed point in the sky because
Because
it's moving
it's
at the
going
same speed as the rotation.
So
That I
because
got-
the
that I got.
Starlink is not geosync, there's going to have to be a really good handoff system from one to the other.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, that's how that's going to work.
Somebody said I saw
Wait,
one of the groups that the military's already tested.
Wait, hold it. He's done it again. All right, really good handoff would mean
It just the same way as on a large property, you would have multiple WAPs or wireless access points.
It's good time to go to a break, people.
And they hand off from one to the other.
When
so
you go to City Hall.
so you don't glitch.
When you go to City Hall and you're on City Hall guest, and you walk around the building and your signal doesn't ever drop down, same thing.
Yeah, because you're being handed
On
off
the
from
Wi-Fi.
you're being handed off from one. All right, instead of saying WAP, let's say node. You're handed off from one node to another node.
Okay.
It's like your cell. That's how your cell works.
Okay.
Your cell phone, when you drive around and you still continue to have the call, it doesn't drop.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
Well, sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I mean, if you get out of every tower, but one tower hands off to another tower.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
same
good.
thing.
Look at what I'm learning today. I feel so good.
Do we have anyone on the phone bridge yet?
No.
Oops.
Who is calling in today?
No Joe Rouse today because you said it was every couple of weeks.
Yeah, but because we just went to phase 2, he was going to give me a call this morning.
I thought he said he was going to go a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I just texted him last night, though, because we did, in fact, switch to phase 2 and we were going to cover it. But that's okay.
Ain't nobody called in.
But that's okay. I'll just I'll go to a break. I've got plenty of things I can talk about. I do have a caller coming on at 10 of.
Okay.
So
Okay.
be on the lookout for that. Pete, take us to break.
Got this in pocket. Gunpowder. I'm gonna use it. Intention. I'm feeling mental. Gonna make you notice. Got motion, restrained emotion. I've been diving, detour leaning. No reason. Just seems so pleasing. Gonna make you notice. Gonna use my arms, gonna use my legs, gonna use my style, gonna use my side step, gonna use my fingers, gonna use my imagination. 'Cause I gonna make you see there's nobody else here, no one like me. I'm special, so special. I gotta have some of your attention. Give it to me. I got rhythm, I can't miss a beat. I got a new skank, sorry. I got something. When can I tell? Gonna make you notice. Gonna use my arms, gonna use my legs, gonna use my style, gonna use my side step, gonna use my fingers, gonna use my imagination. 'Cause I gonna make you see.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com.
Underwriting is brought to you by Boise Cascade Distribution, providing products and services needed for building material dealers, home improvement centers, and industrial customers. They offer everything from engineered wood and plywood to Drex decking and railing, James Hardy siding, and Advantech subfloor. Located at 33 Fowler Street Extension in Westfield and on the web at bc.com, they are committed to providing quality products, great service, convenience, and value.
Join us every Thursday morning
from 6 until at least 7:30.
Check out the Bobby G and Company Show
right here on WSKB 89.5
Community Radio
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
And we are back with the den. Pete, were you telling me that somebody's actually on the phone bridge right now?
Yeah, I don't know who it is. Didn't see it.
Let's find out who it is. Who's on the line?
It's Joe Rouse.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
I know why he's calling. Because we went to phase 2 yesterday. So Joe, talk to us about officially being in phase 2.
Well, this is phase 2, step 1. So there's steps to phase 2.
2.1.
So set your phases on 1. Here we go.
Uh-huh.
We now will allow driving schools and flight schools to open. Of course, all of these are with an enormous amount of requirements and guidelines that they have to meet. Just like phase 1, it's a self-checklist. You have to certify that you can meet all the standards in order to open. And they're intense. There's some of them I keep looking at them and wonder how people are going to be able to do it. But anyway, that's the case throughout all of these and before. Libraries now, you can go in rather than just doing a curbside pickup, which I guess that one is you can go into the desk, but I don't believe you're allowed to peruse around in there, and which I thought was the whole point of libraries, because I don't know how do you just decide that there's some random book that you want to call and order for pickup on the curb. I don't get how that works, but maybe people must be much more avid readers than me.
Hey, Joe, do you have a radio or a TV on in your background?
No.
Okay. All right. I did you hear the echo? Yeah.
I did. I don't know what it was.
I can hear it.
Oh, okay. Go on.
It must just be my booming voice.
I'm not getting it now. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right. So the libraries, that's another one. Lodgings are now going to be able to open. So hotels, motels, they have to skip all of the like the gyms. They can't be open. The pools aren't ready to be open yet. So it's really just a matter of, being able to stay in a hotel room overnight.
The funny thing is, you mentioned the pools. You have the chlorine. That's probably one of the safest places for you to be. I don't get it. Also, I'm willing to bet that the free continental breakfast, you're not going to be able to have a buffet at any of these hotels right now.
Not right now. Maybe in step 2 of phase 2 when they allow more of the indoor dining.
Mm-hmm.
But not right now, right? So all of these things independently within the hotel are, they can reopen when their category comes up at either now or at a later date. So that's good. The hotels will be open again. Tons and tons of, that one, the list just went on and on and on of things that look on the surface to be absolutely ridiculous. Like one of the examples was, I guess this is meant for more of a high scale hotel, but if somebody pulls up, like let's say you pull up in your limo, Ken, and then the guy comes over to open the door for you. He's not allowed to do that anymore. So that's just one example of the little tiny things that you just kind of roll your eyes at initially, but I get it, right? I understand that.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, my caddy is not a limo; it's a Seville.
Oh, good. Nice. And the big one is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's going to be one of those mornings. Go ahead, Joe.
Everybody's been chomping at the bit for the outdoor dining. See how I did that?
Uh-huh. Good for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Don't buzz me. They're not buzzing about that.
No, you're
You'll
not
be
getting
here all week. Make sure you tip the waiters because they need it.
Yeah, try the veal. All right.
Absolutely. So the outdoor dining is a big one now. Everybody's clamoring to try and see, no matter who they are, if they've ever done it before, it doesn't matter. They are allowed right now in phase 2, step 1, for outdoor dining at weighted tables only. So you can't do like a takeout situation and have people line up and get their food and then have them go sit down at a table.
Mm-hmm.
The intent of that, which I thought initially that would be even better than having a waiter or a waitress, because less contact, that could potentially be less than 6 feet.
Right.
But they don't want people congregating around like a window and, socializing. You're supposed to go to your table and sit there for the whole time, unless you have to go to the bathroom. And then you are allowed access to the indoor restrooms of that establishment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are they overthinking this, Joe?
There's absolutely. This is what we've been up against for years and years and years. Now, I'm not a critic of the state health department because we try, very, very closely to abide by what they put out there and promulgate. But it's difficult when it's you're handing down pages and pages of these regulations that are certainly being overthought, and I know it's for a liability purpose, but you're dumping it on your local boards of health to disseminate all this information and also absorb it, which I still am not 100% up to speed on every single part of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Pete, you look at the list of things these people have to do, and some of them I would think would be even cost prohibitive to comply. And so it's like at that point, maybe you just wait another 3 weeks until you can do something that's less restrictive.
Well, and then the other thing is, in these businesses, some of these businesses just can't wait it out. They'll be gone by the time we come to phase 2 or 3, 2.2 or 3. They won't.
Yes.
They can't survive anymore.
Yes, that's why the restaurants right now are really trying to get something going, and they don't. Some of them don't even care about the alcohol sales outside. It's more like, let's just get open again and start doing something. So even the places like the 99 and Applebee's are trying to look at areas of their parking lots that they can use for outdoor dining, since they weren't really set up for that.
Right.
Where's the town on letting some of these restaurants, especially in the congested downtown area, use public access ways or city property to set up for outside dining?
Sidewalks?
Yeah.
Parking lots?
You have some of the greatest questions, Kenny. I'll tell you. It's like right.
I don't mean to put you on the spot either.
Well, you always put me on the spot, but I always have the answers. So
excellent.
Okay.
Let's hear it, Joe.
We have an outdoor dining ordinance that we came up with like 2 years ago, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that addresses all of the situations for establishments that want to set up on the sidewalk, like the burrito place, and Santiago's was another one. They had a little while with that place that went out of business, the pizza, brick-fired pizza place.
Clemenza's, yep.
Clemenza's, yeah. So we definitely are receptive to that, and we just need to make sure that they're going to be able to abide by that ordinance. And if there is any flexibility whatsoever in there for us to kind of help somebody out who has never done it before, even if it's on a street or sidewalk, we'll certainly do that. But we have to be careful, too, that you don't violate any of the ADA regulations as far as passerbys, and that you're not, blocking any sort of safety equipment like fire hydrants or, alarm boxes or anything like that. So there is some wiggle room in there a little bit, and we've been asked by the city council to do everything we can to accommodate people.
And when you say accommodate people, does that include having it done or having an applicant approved sooner now rather than later?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a big push to fast track all of this stuff, and that includes private property, public property. It doesn't matter. We've had meetings or phone calls about this topic with all the people involved. So yeah, we're ready to go. I mean, if somebody puts in an application today, as long as they can check off all those other things on the list, they could be open tomorrow, as far as I'm concerned.
That's good news.
Good to know.
I've got about a minute. I'm actually gone over, but I'm going to give you another minute to get off anything you want to get out because our boss is going to be calling in.
All right. So last thing is I just wanted to mention about there's new retail. You can go into some of the retail establishments. The mall will be open again. Again, huge restrictions. Child care and summer camps are working on that so that you can go back to work as usual and have your kids being taken care of. And the other thing is that our numbers are still low. And over the weekend, we only had one more case. Before that, we were 0. So just remember, everything we're doing is working. Keep doing it. We don't want to see the spike. Just follow all of the guidelines, and I think we're in a good position now. Quite honestly, way better than I thought we'd be at this point.
Excellent. We'll talk after release of phase 2.2.
Yes, sir.
2.2.
All right.
Your other guest is on the phone. Does he have anything to say to Joe, or?
Hey, Joe, you're doing a great job, and thanks for all your hard work.
Ooh, thanks. I thought you were going to yell at me.
Before we get on with Don, Joe, I'll give you the opportunity to get your last words in.
Thank you, and stay healthy, my friends.
Excellent. Good morning, Don. How are you?
Morning, Kate. Morning, Kathy.
Right.
Morning, Don.
So last week, or this past week or so, it's been an interesting week. So we don't need to talk about COVID, and I know that you don't care to talk about COVID much anymore. But you listened to the people and took some advice from people. You thought about it, and you went into free cash to help our schools out.
That's right. So because of the COVID economy, which basically means because of no economy this year, we had a deficit in where we should have been as a city with our budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the numbers. The auditor was looking at the numbers. The treasurer was looking at the numbers and advising me on how much, on how big the gap was, right, from this year to last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then saying, okay, we've got to meet those numbers somehow, either by finding money or by making cuts. Well, the bad news was there was no place to find the money. The state hasn't done its budget. You're not getting any notice from them about annual state aid. The federal government keeps claiming that they're passing bills that are going to send money back to cities and towns and states across the country, but that hasn't materialized. So we really weren't in a position where we could count on receiving any new money. And the tax picture here, even locally, was pretty much diminished. Restaurant taxes and meals taxes and gas taxes and excise taxes, all that stuff was down history.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that, we had to say, all right, well, if we don't have the revenue, we have to make the cuts. I have to deliver, by law, a balanced budget. We're not like Congress. We actually have to balance our budget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear what you did there, yeah.
I proposed I had to propose about an $8 million cut for the city side and school side to share.
Mm-hmm.
And that did not go over big, but we made as many cuts as we could at the city side, and on the school side, they balked. They just said, hey, look, we do this, and it's going to really cut everything to bits. So go back, see if you can find more money. So we had a deadline. June 1st was a deadline I had extended for property tax payments. Long story short, the news came back that although we anticipated being short about $2.5 million, we were only short about $500,000 on property taxes, and so that was about the first good bit of news we got. That meant we'd have more money than we anticipated, and we could take some money out of free cash, which is different than stabilization. More long story short, that's what we did. I met with Matt Barnes and with Chris Caputo, our treasurer, and our auditor, and we said, look, where do we have money actually in hand? I don't want to spend money that we haven't had yet, we haven't received yet. If we have money in hand, let's use it.
And Mayor, listening to all the meetings, because I'm sitting through all of them now, taking money out of free cash is better for the city's credit lending than it is taking out of stabilization. So if we want to get a bond down the road, right, it's better if we take money out of free cash than out of stabilization?
Yeah, because the credit bureaus, the credit ratings like Standard & Poor's and others, they look at how much, they look at the health of the city, and part of that fiscal health is how much money do we have in stabilization as a percentage of our overall budget, and then how willing are we to, raise money if we need to, tax our residents if we have to, those kind of things. And then they rate us. They give us like a credit rating, so that when we go to borrow money for projects like a new elementary school or a bridge or a road, then if we have a better credit rating, we borrow money for less. It's like having a lower interest rate on your credit card.
The other thing,
so that's why I wasn't comfortable using stabilization money, because we definitely would have to pay that back. And since we're not sure how quickly Westfield will come out of this economic malaise that we're in, I didn't want to borrow against unreal money. But I did have stabilization. I'm sorry, I did have free cash.
Free cash.
Free cash was, yep. And after we finished paying for snow and ice, which we still had to finish paying up for, and after we finished paying for some healthcare costs that were there, and then there's a lot of other stuff that pops up that free cash is used for. We determined that we had about $1.5 million that we could put back into the budget, and that would leave us with just under $1 million to use for incidentals and unexpected costs that popped up. And there are a lot of those. Even between now and the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, there's still a lot of unexpected costs.
It is truly amazing to me how much I've learned by being forced to sit here and attending or listening to all these meetings that have been going on. And I've learned a ton by literally sitting through these meetings and just even half listening to them. It's amazing how much you learn.
Municipal budgeting is different from state budgeting, which is what I was pretty much familiar with. But the tenants are still there. You can't spend more money than you have. You can't dip into, certain savings accounts because you need them. And you really can't overtax your people. So that's all good. That's all bad to do. The final thing is we still, in the week or so since we gave the new numbers to the school department, we still haven't heard from the feds. We still haven't heard from the state. So we're no closer to getting additional revenue. But we have decided to commit some of our own. And what that does, it means that the school department suffered about $1.5 million in cuts total.
And overall, considering what situation we're in, that's okay. I mean, it's never okay to cut from the school, but that easily could have been a lot worse.
True, because the city side suffered about a little over a $3 million cut. Shared between all the different departments, but still, a pretty big cut. So, this was one bear of a budget for you to deal with for your first budget. Yeah, when we ran last year, my goal was to work on things like, let's spend money on roads. Let's do things like fixing our infrastructure. Let's do economic development. It wasn't, let's deal with a crisis and dig ourselves out of a hole.
Yeah.
But like Pete said, you learn a lot, and I listened to the advice of a lot of people. I talked to 3 former mayors. I talked with the school committee members, obviously, the people who wrote letters and called my office and talked to me on the streets through masks, of course. And I think it was Rick Sullivan who said you kind of gamble. You take a shot and hope that you're not wrong, and you gamble and put that money to the schools with the hope that you'll be repaid down the road.
All right. I'm starting to run up against the clock. Anything else? And not don't we'll save the dad joke for last. But is there anything else? Because we didn't talk last week, and.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching this.
Oh yeah, last week we spoke. It was the week before we missed each other. So yeah, we can play catch up.
In Florida, that was so awesome. I got a chance to watch all that, all the Dragon space capsule stuff. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm. You know, we've been tracking the views of that coverage we had on Facebook. Pete, last time you looked,
over 4,000 on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then we've discovered that when we put it up on the TelView system, which a lot of public accesses around the country have, I think we're up to either 7 or 8 other communities have picked up our coverage and are running it on their systems.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
it was great. I mean, for me, I was a kid for NASA, and I loved all that stuff as a kid and shuttle missions and all that. So I was just beginning to see it back.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I was glad to see they brought back the worm.
Yeah, I when I was a kid, I had a space jacket and it had the NASA worm for the logo on it.
Yep.
Classic.
Yeah, that was very cool.
The school committee meets tomorrow night, Wednesday night, and I hope that they will vote to accept the new number.
Mm-hmm.
And Superintendent Zaporowski has restored a number of the personnel cuts that were made, and obviously we'll restore more if we do get more money.
Mm-hmm.
If they do accept that, I give the final numbers to council on Friday night. So I'll present, Pete will be there, of course, on the phone or on the Zoom call, and we'll present our first budget to the council, although many of them are pretty well aware of it because we've been working on it with them. But and then Councilor Figge begins the process of all the public hearings of the Finance Committee, and they expect to vote on the final version of the budget on acceptance of the final FY21 budget by the end of June, right before the fiscal year starts July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And I really would encourage people to listen on Channel 15 or WestfieldTV.org to listen to those meetings because they are very important, and you really get a sense of what's going on in the government. Especially the Finance Committee meetings where they really dig into the each department budget. It's really good to listen to and get informed of what's going on. And, if you think you can help improve things, obviously contact the mayor's office or your counselor.
Yeah.
And
suggestions are always welcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. Don, your dad joke for the week.
Why?
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Oh, Kathy, that hurts my feelings.
John, it's gotten so when I see a joke on social media, I think of you. Honestly, because some of them are dad jokes. They're dad jokes, for sure.
Kathy, why did the teddy bear refuse seconds at dinner?
Oh, boy. Why did the teddy bear?
You got her stumped.
You got me.
Because he was already stuffed.
Oh.
That was great.
Classic dad joke there.
and I listened. No, that's a good one. I like that. That's a great third grade one. I love it. It.
Yeah, Quinn liked it.
Tell April thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care of yourself. Stay cool. It's going to be a hot one.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Pete.
Every time
burn down the store, take what you want and more. Shop until you drop, voodoo consumer never stop. Load up on supplies, no sale, no compromise. Gun crazy down the mall, voodoo consumer take it all. Eat this, drink this, try this, charge it, it's fabulous. Step right up and take it, it's fabulous. If you can't afford it, fake it. Be deviously dangerous, ridiculous. make it fabulous. Drive me to the bank, kneel down and give me thanks. Grab your credit card, voodoo consumer, kiss me hard. Eat this, drink this, try this, charge it, it's fabulous. Step right up and take it, it's fabulous. If you can't afford it, fake it. Deviously dangerous, ridiculously cool. Let's make it fabulous. Take it all too far. Sold the company car. A bargain come too late. Voodoo consumer terminate. Eat this, drink this, try this, buy this, wear this, buy this, play this, charge it, it's fabulous. Step right up and take it, it's fabulous. If you can't afford it, fake it. Be deviously dangerous, ridiculously marvelous, meticulously treacherous, deciduously cruel. Just make it fabulous. 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 Fabulous.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley. With convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut, visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Dental. Comprehensive dentistry at 14 convenient locations in Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, West Springfield, Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio 89.5 WSTV.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
I did it!
I did it. He did it. He did it. He certainly did.
I'm talking about Ken Starsky's Wiki program. Captain Palmer too. The Denmark before you. Discussions of logo and happenings too. You got the Ken Starsky Weekly program with Captain Palmer too.
There you go. Our very own. I love the sound of his voice.
You like that?
I do. I do. It's sort of that Willie Nelson gravelly tone to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like listening to it.
All right. Nobody's a stranger to the fact that the shop I was at for 24 years closed up because of COVID, and I was able to take a lot of gear home, so I could work out of my house. And I'm gonna get a license. I'm gonna get a I'm going to do all this, but until I'm able to move on, I'm testing waters to see what works for me,
Okay.
and what
Yep.
direction I want to go
Yep.
in. And I ended up because there's no need to drag equipment in with duplicating tapes. That's where I'm starting.
I saw that.
So, I'm converting all types of tape, VHS-C 8mm, high 8, digital 8, any tape format, not Super 8, not the film. I don't have a projector.
You don't have a film chain.
No, I don't.
I don't know if people remember what
Actually,
Super
they're not
8
that.
is.
They're not. We were looking at that because my mom has some old films. So maybe
I actually
maybe
have
we'll go
some.
in. Maybe we'll go in together on one of those.
It depends if I get calls for Super 8. I mean, I've got
Well,
several. I've got
8,
several
Super-
machines, but they're in disrepair.
I was saying there's
I'm
film
just-
chain stuff that we could buy that might work. Maybe going on at you and I.
Yeah, and I'm just not. I'm not that good with the mechanical aspects of the internal workings of these machines. I can handle the electronic stuff, but there's nothing electronic in there.
I do have the old Super 8 projector,
Mhm.
and you had to thread it a certain way.
That's no big deal.
And good luck to you if it sticks, because then it would burn up.
Mhm.
They were tricky.
Yeah.
You didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah. So I've got the gear set up to do this. I've gotten a couple of messages already, but I need to come up with some type of work order form just to keep track of things and to make things look somewhat official. And I don't know what the hell to call myself.
You need a catchy title.
Is it Whip City Audio Video Services? Whip City Electronic Services? KS Electronic Services. I mean, Ken's Solutions.
KS Media.
No, because there's a lot more than media involved here.
Do you want to start with KS Media and Tech, or KS Resolutions, KS Solutions? KS Solutions.
I like Solutions.
KS Solutions.
KS Solutions, huh? KS Solutions. KISS.
Meet your there you go. Meet your media needs. And parentheses.
KS Solutions. It doesn't. Now I get a
We
phone
need-
call. What
Yeah.
solution?
Well, that's why I would parenthesize it. I would go KS Solutions, and then underneath I would put meeting your tech needs or whatever you. I don't know what you call this. I don't know what you call.
I don't know
you're
what to
going
call
do.
myself. That's
Are
why
you
I'm.
technology? Are you media?
Yes,
Are you
yes.
repair?
Yes.
Are you? You're all the
That's
above.
why you're Solutions.
Yes.
You have
Yeah.
solutions, not problems.
I know, but we need to
There's your tagline.
We need to parenthetical it underneath so that they know what it means. Like saying Geico, you need to say insurance because you don't know what Geico is, other than the little lizard.
The gecko.
Yeah, a gecko. So you need a parentheses underneath to say what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know
Exactly.
what you are. I don't know what you are, Ken.
I don't know what I am.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know tech, so I'm not sure what service.
I think if I work off of KS Solutions, that gives me a starting point.
A starting
Yeah,
point.
because you can subtitle, your different areas of expertise.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you're right. A
You've
subtitle.
got problems. I've got answers.
There's your
Again,
tagline.
again, we need to be specific.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but you can. But under that logo, you could put, multimedia transfers, electronic repairs. Under those things, you could put all those subtitles, and that all works under KS Solutions. It's a kind of a umbrella.
And I'll tell you, there's not a lot of services available in Westfield. Even a lot of places that say they do repair, they don't. They send it out. So there's a big need for this, I think, here in town.
I would agree with that.
I mean, I've had issues, and now my tech services are in New Zealand. So when things happen with me, I'm lost. I have a computer that you're welcome to try it, and I will gladly pay you. I got up one day, and it just didn't turn on.
By the way, did you hear in the news that New Zealand was the first industrialized nation
Yeah.
to completely open back up?
COVID free.
Yep.
And my kids were screaming because when she shut it down, she shut everything down. You couldn't leave the house. I mean, we thought we had rules. They had rules that you couldn't even blow your nose in public. It was just boom. But she did it. And they are COVID free. I still can't send the cats, though. Darn.
When you say cats, are we talking about living or frozen?
Schrodinger's cat. No, the frozen. There he goes again. No,
I'm never gonna let you live it down that there's cats in your freezer.
But that's what they do with the veterinarians. They will freeze your animal if your animal passes during the year.
Mhm.
Some places will do that for you, and you pick it up in the spring when you can bury them, because you can't. So anyway, you're not getting me off on this. I'm going back to you. I saw what you tried to do. What kind of services are you going to offer? You don't know yet, or you? How about putting out a survey?
Flat panel repair, loudspeaker repair, tape transfers, Wi-Fi improvement. I had a whole list of things I typed up last night. It's like 2 pages worth of things I'm capable of doing. Right now.
Okay. It sounds like you've got a business model, you've got a plan that you're working on.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I'm no dummy to this. I've been in management for years and years.
Now,
3 months out of graduation, I was into management. I mean,
are you going to be able to set yourself up to take credit cards?
I can do that now.
Okay. That's
anybody with a PayPal account can do that right
now. All
now.
right, because people are going to want to know that. There's a lot of people that don't deal in cash anymore. I know we ran into that at the theater.
I'm going to get a Square device, but until I set that up, I can just send an invoice through PayPal, and that'll work.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that works.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a member of PayPal to pay an invoice through PayPal. You just you click the link and you put in your credit card and you're good.
I do not have a PayPal account. I know. I do. I don't.
Might need to invest in QuickBooks though. Keep all your business accounts.
Oh, I used a handwritten ledger at the last place. I'm all set.
Even I'm beyond that, Cat.
Oh no, we had the large column there pad, and we did everything out by hand.
Ouch.
There's reasons why you want to do that. That I can't get into.
Ken's OG.
But I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way.
Okay.
Because I got it to the point where bookkeeping that way, I actually do quicker in utilizing the computer because I tried.
Okay.
And I'm good with computers.
Okay.
Yeah.
We trust you.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
No, we.
The only thing I computerized was invoicing for accounts receivable.
All right.
Yeah, that way there's something professional goes out. But even our sales slips, we were handwriting them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good to know. I like paper. I'm a paper person, but to each his own.
Do I owe you a quarter after?
No, we're okay.
Okay. All right. You are a person of a certain age, and I mean that very kindly.
I'm okay with it.
And happy birthday, by the way.
I know. Thank you.
All right. Not saying the number. Last
No,
week.
it was last week.
Oh, because today's Tina Gorman.
Last week. Happy birthday, Tina.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't watch my show.
She's into work by then.
So you're witnessing and looking at this COVID, which is a viral disease.
Mm-hmm.
As a little girl, you dealt with a very serious viral disease.
I did. I did. During the epidemic of polio in 1952, I was one of the polio children, and polio has been around for thousands of years, and now, and the reason I brought this up to you earlier is you're seeing a lot of reference to polio in the news, social media. History Channel had a big show on it just a couple weeks ago, and they're comparing it to COVID. And although there are some similarities, they're two very different issues and very different developments and ramifications. Polio was around for 1,000 years. Our first epidemic in the United States from polio was in 1916. That was our first really big one. There was another one in the 1930s, but there was a huge resurgence after World War II. And of course, you had your baby boomers, so it makes sense. You had soldiers coming back from overseas, bringing things home, and then you had a huge explosion. Polio usually did, in those days, strike children, especially 5 and younger. What I found that was interesting, because of course our most famous polio victim was FDR, was Roosevelt himself, who was responsible for establishing the National Polio Foundation in as well as March of Dimes to pay for research. He was responsible for bringing about the research that ended up in the final vaccine with Salk and then Sabin with the oral years later. But after World War II, we had a huge resurgence. And at one point we thought polio is viral. Like COVID, polio is viral. And at first, we thought it was being spread because you were unclean and you were dirty. And as does happen, they blame certain people or certain organizations or certain circumstances. And we're finding out now, in doing the research we're doing with virals, that isn't truth. That they felt the reason we had the polio in the late 1940s and early 50s was because we were becoming more hygiene conscious. We were becoming more sanitizing, and the virus that we had built up immunities for earlier, in the earlier parts of the century, now we didn't have that natural immunity any longer. And the scary thing about polio is it was attacking anyone. It didn't, like COVID, it doesn't have, viruses don't pick you out because you're poor or you're short or you're tall or you're rich or you're cute or you're famous. A virus picks you out because they find a perfect host. So in 1952, which was a huge epidemic, we had almost 60,000 cases, which in today's numbers, keeping in mind that our population has increased. So 60,000, that's a lot of people. And out of that 60,000, maybe there were 3,000 deaths. If you had polio, there were different ways, like COVID, and like most viruses, you could have it, never know you had it, and you had no effects. You could have it, you could get a cold, it would start, polio started like a sore throat, headache, fever, and in a few days you were fine. But then, like my case, it developed into something that I needed to be hospitalized and that I was paralyzed while I had the polio. With the paralyzing, some people recovered. We all have those visions, and my generation has this vision because it was on the nightly news every night of wards full of children in iron lungs. And I know children in Westfield, people my age, that were in iron lungs. And so all they ever saw of their family was a mirror. And by the way, things were different then. You know, in today's society, you can go and stay with your child in a hospital. Back then you couldn't. And by the way, a parenthetical aside to this is they did practice social distancing. They did close schools, summer camps, pools. Polio seemed to be a disease of the summertime. It would most often peak in August or September for some reason, disappear during the winter, and then be back again in the summer. So they did close things. You were quarantined. You didn't go to, even churches then were closed. I know we're acting like this is all a brand new thing, but it wasn't. And honestly, Ken, people were terrified. Terrified because it struck your child. You didn't know when, and it didn't care who you were. So there was absolutely that same fear that we've had now that we're experiencing, which is, I think, why people are comparing it. The other thing I found out that was very interesting through the research, and again, I would suggest people not take my word for it, because this much I know of research. You find one source that tells you A, you find another source that tells you B. So please look it up for verification. But I found that once we developed the paralysis, as I did, if you were paralyzed, your chances of it being fatal were about 20%. So I had a 2 out of 10 chance of dying. And I do know, as an adult, as an after effect, I do know that they did tell my parents that it could be fatal and probably would be. However, adults who got it, and adults did get it, as FDR was an example, and I've done research on that because I know there are sources out there that are saying, well, maybe it wasn't polio. From the research I've done on him, yes, in all probability it was. But adults, once they went to that paralysis level, had a higher chance of dying. Their death rate was closer to 30%, whereas the children's was 20. And maybe that's because we didn't have as many maybe underlying issues of it being fatal. Maybe we were healthier. I really don't know what the issues were. But with a virus and with polio, they were terrified. Once we got it, and I was in the Springfield isolation, I was hospitalized from August to November.
August, September, October, November.
Yes.
4 months.
4 months without any family, with only nursing staff, other children in my ward. The first ward, and I was just talking to someone on social media who had it the same time and was in the same hospital I was. And we remembered being 2 beds to a cubicle with the plexiglass separating us, as we're doing today. From there, I went to Wesson Memorial, not Wesson Women's. Wesson Memorial was a separate hospital, and I was there for several months. I was in a room with 2 other children. When I was finally allowed to come home, I came home with that big steel brace on my arm. I wore those braces that you saw. I had to learn how to walk again because I couldn't walk. My left side was impaired. And then I had months of physical therapy. And the physical therapist I had is a well-known man in Westfield, Arthur Peters. He ended up being the headmaster here at the trade school for many, many years. But when he was a young man, he was a physical therapist. And in those days, we didn't have the handicap laws. So a lot of my generation who stayed in the braces were very, very at a disadvantage in terms of being in schools, being in theaters, being in stores, because we didn't have the handicap accessibility. Again, what makes polio different from today's viruses is the after effect of polio. Although we may be finding
post-polio syndrome.
Post-polio, but not only that, post-polio is a whole nother issue. But children of my generation that were paralyzed, we often went home and did not recover. Now, I did not regain use of my left arm. They did not regain some of them being able to walk. There are still 2 people today in iron lungs. There are still polio victims who have to stay on breathing apparatus because their lungs, if it affects your chest region, the muscles in your chest, you can't breathe. So there are still victims who are on respirators. So it wasn't so much the disease itself. First of all, your chances of getting as far as I did were very small. It's like COVID. It's small compared to your population. You know, you're talking about 2%, and that sounds huge, but it was small in those days. There were doctors, again, same thing as now, that poo-pooed it and said, oh, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get it. Well, guess what? I did. And if I put my left arm over my head, it will fall on my head, which my sister thought was a great trick when we were kids. Watch Kathy hit herself on the head.
And now it just causes problems at the airport.
It does. Because
when you go into the scatter device.
I can't. You know, there are things I can't do, but let me say this. I was watching someone wallpaper, and they were holding the wallpaper up against the ceiling and slicing it with a razor, and I thought, oh, how can they do that? And it never occurred to me that it was because I couldn't, not because you could. And as polio recoveries, we were taught you can do it. You will do it. But that was the issue with polio, that you often didn't recover. Post-polio syndrome is a whole nother ballgame. I do not have it, fortunately. And again, there's not a lot of research out there. What polio victims are finding is muscle weakness, fatigue. Some are going back to using crutches and braces.
A friend of mine had a limp from it.
And they are going back to it. So we don't know why. We don't believe it's a resurgent of the virus. Doctors and researchers think that what it is you've just overtaxed the muscles that didn't work, and they're finally giving up. Because what happens is, for example, in my arm, there are other muscles that have taken over. If you look at my arm is like blubber. It wiggles.
Well, that's the school.
It's
elementary teacher thing.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not old age, and it's not. It's just there is no muscle there, but other muscles have taken over. You know, I was a majorette in high school. I twirled a baton with both arms, and it takes over. But when you have a disease that attacks children without warning, I mean, I woke up one day and I had a fever, and that was it. And in those days, the doctor came to your house. And they wrapped me up, put me in the car, took me away, and I didn't see my parents again for months because we were isolated. Today, polio is pretty much gone.
And why?
In the United States, because
why?
in
Say it.
1955, we came up with a Salk vaccine.
Oh, a vaccine.
And they will say, oh, but during that test, children died from it and they still got it. Yes, that did happen. And that happened because in one of the labs, the vaccine was not properly created. It was a mistake in the lab, not with the vaccine. But because we have the vaccine, the last case of homegrown polio in the United States was in 1979. We had one case pop up in 1994, and that was from someone who brought it in from another country. So
thank you, science.
There you go. And for all purposes, it has now been eradicated. For the most part, it is still an issue in countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan, but for the most part, we have managed to at least keep it at bay.
And kids, that was your history lesson for the week.
Yeah, it you know what, Ken? It was a terrible time. I have to think, being a parent, what my mom and dad had to go through. And you think about it, and I think about, because I'm a teacher, and I think about child development. We're talking about today's children that are now at home and being homeschooled and won't be back in school, and they may be, for 6 months, and what kind of an effect it has. Well, we had a whole generation of children who weren't even being talked to other than nurses for 4 months. 4 months I laid in a bed and had very little interaction. But boy, I made up for it, didn't I?
You certainly did. 9:38. I have one of your stories coming up at 9:40, which means I need to stop now and we do underwriters, or I just keep going. All right, Pete's giving me this, so I've got about another minute. Thanks for that story.
And even, you know what, even talking about it gives me chills. It upsets me to talk about polio, because it was a big deal. Folks, please get your polio shots. Please do this for your child. You do not want your child to ever go through what I went through, and still go through every day. So there you go. And you'll see a lot of people talking about it now because of the COVID. There are similarities. Viral, can't kill it, can't treat it. We can only do palliative care and keep you comfortable and hope we find a vaccine for it.
Excellent. I'm going to finish up the last 20 minutes of the show with cattails. This is going to be the little ships. I have one more left in the can after this. So start thinking about the next story.
All righty. Another one that you saw a lot of publicity because we came up on the anniversary, and I wasn't familiar with it till I started doing research. So look it up, folks.
All right, this is the little ships. If you are listening on the radio, there's going to be about 20 to 30 seconds of silence whilst we go through the opening credits. Pete?
All righty. Hello again and welcome. This is Kathy Palmer with Cat Tales, and behind the cameras we have Ken Stomsky again, and welcome back for more of our stories. In the past, we've talked a little bit about the genre of books and what they are about, and today I have a fascinating story for you that is also historic fiction. Now, if you remember earlier, we've said that an historic fiction is a story that's based on a real event, but the story that's made up isn't really true. So what we have here is sort of half and half. The story I'm going to read to you today is The Little Ships, and it's written by Louise Borden. It is based on a real, true event. And one of the reasons why I'm happy to be bringing this story to you today is this happens to be the 80th anniversary of the event. And the event is the little ships that helped rescue the soldiers in Dunkirk during World War II. So here's what happened. 80 years ago, between May 26th and June 4th, was one of the biggest rescue operations to take place in the beginning of World War II. Europe was under invasion from the German armies, and unfortunately, over hundreds and thousands of men, well over 100,000 men from France and England had been stranded in the small town of Dunkirk, which is in the northern coast of France, about 50 miles, give or take, from the White Cliffs of Dover in Great Britain. The only way to rescue hundreds and thousands of men from being overrun by the German army would have been by sea. But to do so would have taken so many ships that the British Navy just didn't have. And so a call went out to all of the small privately owned vessels to help rescue. Part of it was to ferry the men back, but another part was to be able to get the men off the beaches to some of the large battleships. And this is the story of one person who may or may not have been involved, Again, the story is true. The story about the little ships who came to rescue the men in Dunkirk was true. The story about the little girl in the ships, well, that's completely made up. And you'll see for yourselves. So here it is, the little ships, the heroic rescue in Dunkirk in World War II by Louise Borden. And again, the title page. In 1940, I lived with my father in the town of Deal on the Kent coast of England, safe from the thunder of the German guns in France. Some days I could hear it rolling in big booms across the English Channel. Some days I could feel the guns rattling the glass in the windows in our street. My father, Martin Gates, owned the Lucy, a sturdy fishing ship. Her wooden tubs were thick and heavy and smelled of herring and mackerel and cod. I liked to watch my father's quick hands stacking tubs and sorting fish, trading stories on the beach with the other men. They were all Deal fishermen too. But now there was talk about the trouble in Dunkirk across the Channel, only 50 miles away from us. British soldiers were trapped there, they said. Thousands and thousands were upon the beach in France. The Germans and the tanks would capture them quickly. Family would lose all of those men who were uncles, brothers, fathers, sons. Every boat along the English coast was needed to go and help. The owners were to report for orders and maps and charts. My brother John was a British soldier, and he was fighting in France. Maybe he was in trouble there too. Maybe he was trapped on the beaches in Dunkirk. Maybe he was waiting for a Navy ship or a fishing boat like our Lucy to come and rescue him. Fishermen on the beach always said that I was my father's daughter. I could set an anchor, I could coil a rope, and I could nudge speed out of my boat's old engine. I was better at fishing than some of the village men that were signing up to rescue the men in Dunkirk. There were men signing up like Mr. Lewis, who worked in a post office, Mr. Crippen, a locksmith, or Mr. Marsh, who taught geometry. So I pulled on a woolen cap that belonged to my father, and it smelled of herring. And then I took some of my brother John's overgrown trousers and pulled them on. Nobody knew who I was except for my dad. Hurry, not much time, everyone said. Hurry, too many men, not enough ships. Those were the words that were echoing through the town, and we all hurried up and down the beach. I went with my father, and I carried stacks of water. I lugged more cans full of fuel and yards of rope, and I hurried again to haul the wet nets off of the Lucy. We're going to need every inch of room for the soldiers, said my father. Maybe even John, I called back. That afternoon, we set sail for Dunkirk. Dad didn't have much time to talk. His words were in his hands that were stowing a rope ladder and checking the engine gears. He kept his words, reading the channel charts and maps, and he scanned the skies for the clouds. My father wasn't a famous man, but he knew the channel. He knew about the sea, and he knew about the tides, and he knew about the currents. And he knew how to read the compass, and he knew how to set sail by the stars in the skies, the same stars that explorers had told me about in school. And so, on the last day of May, the Lucy left Deal and set sail for Ramsgate to join the other ships that were sailing. There were all kinds in the convoy. We were all set to sail across the channel. Our group was amazing. It was the largest armada I had ever seen. Armada. There's a word I learned in school. That day, the line of convoys stretched out across the channel, going off to rescue the British Army. We stretched end to end, almost 5 miles long, on the calm sea. The smaller boats, to save fuel, were being towed in the wake of the larger boats. That day, many ropes were frayed and engines stalled and stopped. I listened to the low throb of Lucy's engine, hour after hour, mile after mile. Steady, engine, steady, friend. There were dozens of ships around us, all headed to Dunkirk, too. The little ships looked even smaller as they went across. Everyone on the boats around the Lucy knew that there was terrible trouble ahead. Big Navy ships passed us on the way back to England, going back, headed back from Dunkirk, loaded with the English soldiers that were ready for home. They made a silent parade, not a grand parade, but a silent parade of large hulking ships in white and gray, with their decks and railings crowded with men. I tried to find my brother John, but I did not see him. They were faces of strangers, men headed for home. Dad handed me a mug of sweet, strong tea, and he gave me a woolen jacket to keep me warm. When our convoy reached the French coast, we could hear the guns, the German guns, and other guns heading back. And then the Lucy was there, off the Dunkirk beaches, in the night and in the morning, and it was real. The oily smoke got into my eyes, and all of the terrible noises of war got into my ears. And all the men, the sandy beaches of Dunkirk were black with lines of curved like a snake. The lines were the British soldiers lined up on the beach, with some French soldiers also. And there were even men, soldier to soldier, standing on the mole, which was the wooden pier reaching out into Dunkirk's harbor. Thousands and thousands of soldiers waiting to be taken home. We stayed close behind a minesweeper that sailed into the shallows. We went in to ferry our first load. I stood on the front of the boat and I called back the depth of the water to my father so he would know. This beach was not at all like the beach in Deal. It was flat and wide, and the sand was covered with men, thirsty and hungry. There were horses running loose from the French soldiers. There were dozens of barking dogs, trucks and equipment, and it was a wild mess of an army on the run. There were hundreds and hundreds of other ships and little ships like ours, English, French, Belgian, Dutch. We were rowing and carrying and paddling and ferrying from the sand beaches out to the big ships anchored out in the deeper water. And then we went back again for another load. My father gazed at thousands of men, and I knew that he was thinking about John. He stood at the helm, holding the Lucy steady in the water against the wakes of the other ship, against other broken planks that were washing up on the beach, against lost boots and army coats and everything and all of the equipment that the men had to leave behind because they could only take themselves on board the ship. I had to stand taller and help my father. I had to help the sailors whose names I would never know, the soldiers who I would never see again. And I had to say that I was not afraid to see the war. I had to pretend that my arms didn't ache from hauling soldiers dripping wet, from the rocking of our boat. My hands were rubbed raw inside the gloves that were too big for me because they were my father's, not mine. Most of Dunkirk was on fire. They were burning the town, the harbors, the houses, and the docks. I had to rub the sting from my eyes, not from tears, but from the black smoke that was rolling over the sea. And I couldn't look for more than a second as the soldiers cried out for my help. Soldiers who had no bandages, just blood dripping down their faces, needing help. We ferried a Cameron Highlander who couldn't find his regiment. We ferried a red-faced cook and so many British soldiers that I lost count. In all, we must have ferried more men than I knew in Lucy's loads out to the big ships. I saw two men side by side in a half-swamped boat that were rowing themselves to ferry men a few at a time out. I saw someone had made a plank raft with a rusty bicycle to row people in and out. And I saw a soldier who'd lost his helmet but still carried a parakeet in a cage. I saw men that were brave and some that were not. I heard shouts in English and French and Belgian. I saw anyone coming. Get the men off the beaches. Get the men off the mole. Get the men into the ships. Get them home. That was a job that we were sent to do. That was the job that we were all part of. I kept checking Lucy's fuel. With only 2 cans still left, we decided to pull away. We followed a Smoky Joe and a Dutch scoot, and we headed back home. My father and I prayed that John would be safe. We prayed that he had found his own sturdy ship back to England. Suddenly, the sky was full of noise from an enemy plane. It was a dive-bombing German plane, and some stray bullets hit the Lucy, and she sprang a dozen leaks. Our last load of soldiers that we carried on board had to bail with their helmets all the way home across the English Channel. But Lucy's engines kept a steady hum. I knew them so well. And then there we were, with dozens of other ships streaming into the harbor safely in Dover, bringing our army home. I helped my father to look for John, and I asked several soldiers on the way who were giving orders, but no one could give us any answers about where he was. The ships were crowding the harbors, ships with tall, skinny soldiers, but none of them were my brother. Mr. Lewis and Mr. Marsh spotted the Lucy, and they came over to see us to tell us that they had been pulled all the way back by a Scottish trawler to the white cliffs of Dover. But then they looked away, and they told us sadly that Mr. Cribben would not ever be coming back home. And so we went back to Deal, and we sailed the Lucy back onto our narrow beach. We had kept a black matted dog that one of these French soldiers had asked us to take. I named him Smoky Joe. Smoky Joe, the dog with his damp rope collar, was now part of Dunkirk that we brought home to Deal. On June 3rd, we got word that John had come back safely on a Belgian tug. The very next day, I sat by the radio with my father and Smoky Joe. I sat up while the Prime Minister thundered his grand speech. I was glad that Mr. Churchill didn't keep his words in his hands, the way the Deal fishermen did. At first, he thought that only a few men could be saved from Dunkirk. At first, he thought that they would all not be coming home, but he was wrong. The newspaper said that we had saved 338,000 men from the beaches of Dunkirk, all coming home. I think Mr. Churchill really knew all along that our country could do it if we pulled in together. That's why he sent all the big Navy ships, and that's why he sent all the little ships, like our Lucy, too. And that is the story of Dunkirk. All told, there were approximately 861 ships that ferried the men back and forth across the English Channel from the beaches of Dunkirk. Since approximately, I believe, 1965, but I'm not sure of that date, there has been a reunion every 5 years of the little ships that sailed forth across. This year, they were expecting at least 76 ships to take part in that journey. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they have not been able to do so. But we think, and I Googled this, and you might want to check this by yourself, that there are approximately still 100 of these ships that are still seaworthy and sailing. Keep in mind that these little ships that sailed across the harbor to help rescue these men, these little ships were private citizens. They were fishermen. They were luxury yachts. There were all kinds of little ships that helped save these soldiers. The biggest thing they did was to be able to ferry the men from the beaches out to the larger carriers, because the carriers could not get in close enough to rescue them. So if you want more information, there is a lot of information out about this rescue. It's a well-known event. Keep in mind that it was May 26th to June 4th, 80 years ago. So that's an important anniversary for us to acknowledge. And I thank you for listening. See you later.